Good evening, everyone. The meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of the Council Annual Meeting Notice dated January 2nd, 2020, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room. The city has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Ms. Hairston?
Here.
Ms. Little?
Here.
Mr. Naidu?
Here.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Bartan?
Here.
President Fox?
Here. Okay. Now I'd like to call on Diana Burrows to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the notices regarding closed session and hearings and comments?
A closed session meeting, as authorized by state statute, was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on HTTV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the City Clerk's office at rlicatis@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes or so in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on to minutes for approval. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of regular and closed session of February 19th?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Motion carries. On to reports. Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. First thing I want to talk about is the coronavirus, or COVID-19. So last week, before Governor Murphy declared a state of emergency and a public health emergency, I moderated a discussion with city officials and first responders on what the City of Summit is doing to prepare for the COVID-19 virus reaching our community. It is almost 20 minutes long, but worth watching as it contains useful information on citywide preparations and how to avoid exposure. The city website is being updated daily with information provided by the Westfield Regional Health Department, the CDC, and the New Jersey Health Department. Please check back daily for updates. City staff are making preparations, focusing on containment, and are ready to respond when needed. We have phone calls among the city and the schools and the first responders and the health department on a daily basis. I look forward to the presentation from our health officer and director, Megan Avalone, later on this evening, and to update current guidance being issued to municipalities and schools. And then lastly, probably the most efficient, the easiest way to get information is to sign up for notifications. You can, of course, check the website every day, but if you sign up for notifications, you automatically get an email every time something is posted on the city website. So all you have to do is go to the City of Summit homepage, cityofsummit.org, and at the bottom there's one of the buttons says notifications. You click on that, up comes a list of all the topics that you might be interested in, and one of course will have health issues. Just put in your email or your cell phone, and then whenever something is posted by our communications chief, it'll automatically be pushed to your email or your text, and that way you're not having to check with the website on a daily basis. The 2020 census. Beginning on or about March 12th to the 20th, most households in Summit will receive a letter asking them to go online to complete the census questionnaire. My goal for the community is 100% participation, and I encourage you to go online as soon as you receive the letter and respond. Census reporting determines the allocation of federal funding to local communities like ours. An undercount of Summit's population will decrease the amount of federal dollars sent to our community, which would be detrimental to the city's infrastructure, health services, schools, and development projects over the next decade, pardon me. Information on the census and an expanded timeline is available at census.gov. There's a scholarship opportunity for Summit High School junior and seniors. In partnership with New Jersey State League of Municipalities, I'm pleased to be able to offer the Lewis Bay Future Municipal Leaders Scholarship Opportunity for high school juniors and seniors from Summit High School. The theme of the essay is what my municipal government does best. 3 winners will be chosen from the state by the New Jersey League of Municipalities to receive a $1,000 scholarship. The deadline is March 11th, 2020. More information is available on the city website, cityofsummit.org. The high school received all this information a good month ago through the guidance departments and the high school principal, but it is March 11th. And then lastly, the Police Department Summer Youth Academy, one of my favorite things that occurs in this building in the summer. Applications are now being accepted through May 1st for Summit Police Youth Academy. 2 one-week sessions will be held from July 20th to the 24th and July 27th to the 31st from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily and is open to children ages 11 to 14. Applications are available online at the Summit Police Department in City Hall and at the Lawton C. Johnson Summit Middle School. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now on to Michael Rogers, our city administrator, for his report.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. I'll start off with an announcement about the most anticipated night of the year. At the next council meeting, March 24th, I will be presenting the city's 2020 municipal budget for council consideration and introduction. I thought Paul would have a drum roll for me, but he didn't. Not Paul. Another administration note, applications are being accepted from March 9th to April 10th for the City of Summit Internship Program for college students. Residents completing at least 1 year of college are eligible to participate. Unpaid internships take place over a 4-week period in June. Please send resumes and a cover letter to the press office at cityofsummit.org. Enrollment is now open for the 2020 Hometown Heroes program that honors Summit's veterans and active military for their service to our country, with a banner that is displayed on a light post or telephone pole from Memorial Day through July 4th. The deadline to apply is March 31st, 2020. For information on how to apply, please visit the city's website. Work on New Providence Avenue off of Kent Place Boulevard is now complete. Curbs were installed and drainage was improved. Intermittent closures will continue during the replacement of a gas main by PSE&G. This work is being done before the road is paved later this spring. PSE&G will also be working in other locations throughout Summit now through summer 2020 to replace aging cast iron pipes with new plastic and coated steel piping to ensure continued reliability of its gas system. Work will take place Monday to Friday between hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. with potential for Saturday work. Finally, residential pickup of leaves begin on Monday, April 6th through Friday, April 24th on regular household trash collection days. Please place leaves on the curb in papered biodegradable bags. Please do not rake or blow leaves into piles in the street. Also, please do not include twigs, branches, and other yard debris in leaf bags. And that's all I have for this evening, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. And now for the Council President's report, I'd like to preview a few issues that are coming up in the next few months on Council. First, as our City Administrator said, we have been working to create a lean budget that continues to provide all the services that our residents count on. The budget will be introduced at the next meeting with a presentation, and then the formal hearing and the vote will be on April 28th. As always, we appreciate hearing from you with your thoughts about the budget, so please be sure to come for the presentation and then also for comments on the 28th of April. Second, we're moving ahead with Broad Street redevelopment, and the last time you heard from us about this in December, Council conditionally designated L&M and Toll Brothers to be the developers of the site. The next step is to negotiate an agreement that will lay out in detail the specifics of the project, the amount of money that the developer will pay for the city-owned property, and a timetable for construction. Our steering committee met recently to discuss next steps in the negotiation process, and our planner is working with the developer to lay out a step-by-step approach to achieve the goals of the redevelopment plan. Once we have a proposal for the specifics of the project, we will seek further input from the public. This project is an opportunity for thoughtful redevelopment of an underutilized part of our downtown, which will preserve the city's character and create more parking and amenities that Summit residents would like to see at no cost to the taxpayers, and with the future benefit of increased municipal tax revenues. The redevelopment project will also allow us to build a new firehouse on Broad Street next to the Broad Street Garage. And that will replace a 100-year-old building that is in serious need of upgrades and repairs. The fire department is creating the bid documents now, and the city will be going out to bid for the new firehouse later this year. While the cost of this building is significant, the current firehouse building can be sold as part of the Broad Street West redevelopment project to help defray the costs of the project. Third, the council is focused on public safety and has recently approved several new pedestrian safety enhancements, including a sidewalk on Pine Grove between Blackburn Road and Ashland Road. That should be happening starting this spring or summer. We've also installed rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks, with the newest beacon at Union Place and Summit Avenue, which is being considered at tonight's meeting. And we've also installed several four-way stop signs, with more to come. Tonight, we'll also be discussing changing the phasing of traffic signals at the intersection of Morris Avenue and Orchard Street. And this is to encourage cars to use that intersection when turning on to Orchard Street, rather than using Bryant Parkway as a cut-through. And this is something that we are doing in response to requests from people who live on Bryant Parkway, and also just commuters who find that they get hung up at that intersection. And this is something we've been working on with the county for a while, so this is a nice thing to see coming. Finally, at our meeting on April 14th, we'll be discussing sustainability, and we'll be talking about the Earth Day cleanup, the free market building that's well underway, and the upcoming restrictions on single-use plastics, as well as other new initiatives that are coming in the future. So I hope you plan to attend upcoming meetings and to learn more and to share your thoughts with us. Thank you. Now we're on to presentations. And this evening, this is Women's History Month, and we have two presentations. Oh, sorry, mayoral proclamation first. Okay, we have a mayoral proclamation for the American Red Cross Month. Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council President. Mabel Ramirez, the new Executive Director of the Red Crossroads, would you please join me at the podium? Just want to make sure they won't get on TV if I just don't talk like this. Okay. Ready? All right. Thank you for being here. Whereas more than 139 years ago, the American Red Cross was established as a humanitarian organization guided by 7 fundamental principles, including humanity, impartiality, and independence, to provide services to those in need regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or citizenship status. Today, the American Red Cross is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world and delivers its mission every day to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And whereas every year the American Red Cross responds to an average of more than 62,000 disasters across the country, from small home fires to devastating massive disasters. Last year's large crises included mudslides in California, wildfires in Colorado and California, destructive hurricanes in Florida and the Carolinas, and a devastating typhoon in U.S. territories. Thousands of American Cross volunteers provided around-the-clock shelter for disaster victims, served millions of meals and snacks with partners, and distributed millions of relief items. And whereas in New Jersey, the Red Cross has a long history of helping our neighbors in need. The Red Cross New Jersey region assisted with 821 local disasters in the past year alone, and helped save lives through our Home Fire campaign. Since the campaign launched in October 2014, the New Jersey region has worked with community partners to install more than 41,000 smoke alarms. Meanwhile, in our area, the Red Cross handles an average of 7,233 emergency military calls every year and collects an average of 94,708 units of blood from our generous blood donors. And whereas March is Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help members of the community. The Red Cross depends on these local heroes to deliver help and hope during a disaster. We applaud our heroes here in New Jersey who give of themselves to assist their neighbors when they need a helping hand. And whereas the American Red Cross shelters, feeds, and provides emotional support to victims of disasters, supplies about 40% of the nation's blood, teaches skills that save lives, provides international humanitarian aid, and supports military members and their families. Whereas we dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on volunteers and the generosity of the public to perform its mission. Now, therefore, I, Nora Radist, Mayor of the City of Summit, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2020 as American Red Cross Month in the City of Summit, and I urge our citizens to give of your time, blood, and money to make a difference, and I encourage all Americans to support this noble humanitarian mission. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Summit to be affixed this 10th day of March in the year 2020. If I may, I'd like to welcome Mabel as the Executive Director. As we all know, Chrissy Hottie served in that position for many years, and you're stepping into big shoes, but ones that you can fill with that question, I'm sure. So welcome to the Summit, and congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. And don't forget, everybody, they need our blood and money.
Money will take it all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mabel, did you want to say a few words?
Oh,
I wasn't thinking, I apologize.
we just wanted to thank the Township of Summit and its residents for its continued support, and we encourage everyone, just like Mayor said, if anybody is interested in being part of our mission and contributing financially or with their time, talent, or blood, please visit redcross.org. As you know, or you may not know, every 8 minutes, a Red Cross volunteer is helping a family that's been affected by disasters. And so we literally cannot do what we do without volunteers. In New Jersey, our volunteer workforce is 92% of our workforce. And so we depend on volunteers a lot. So if you're interested in volunteering and becoming part of this great mission, feel free to reach us in the office or visit redcross.org/volunteer. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to presentations. So this month is Women's History Month, and we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in New Jersey. So we have two presentations. Our first one is from our Union County Clerk, Joanne Rajapi. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. I prepared a very short, concise, I hope, history of suffrage in New Jersey on this 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. Okay. All right. So I hope this is, actually, we were one of a few colonies and states that allowed women to vote as early as 1776. By virtue of our first constitution, women who had 50 pounds of money and lived in the county for 12 months, as well as free blacks could vote. But the legislature soon changed that in 1807, prohibiting women from voting. I really think it had to do with an election that took place here in what was then Essex County. There was a question of where the new courthouse would be built, in Newark or Elizabethtown. Well, the Elizabethtown people, of course, wanted it here, and Newark wanted it there. There was a lot of fraud in the election. They had young boys dressing as women voting. So that may have been an impetus for the legislature to change it. But nonetheless, we did have the right to vote from the very beginning, and then it was taken away. It's very interesting that three big trends came together to create suffrage. One was the temperance movement. The other was the abolitionist movement. And the third, of course, was women's suffrage. Women who were involved in one tended to be involved in others. And they were angry women. So in 1848, Lucretia Mott decided to have a conference in Seneca Falls, New York. The reason being that in 1842, there was a World Abolition Conference she wanted to attend. They refused her admittance because she was a woman. So she decided to do something about it. And out of Seneca Falls came the Declaration of Sentiments, which was based on the Declaration of Independence and said everyone had a right to be treated equally and have a vote. So that was the start. Mary Philbrook, I don't know if everyone's familiar with her. She's a New Jersey girl from South Jersey. She decided she wanted a better life in the 1890s. She wanted to become an attorney, but she could not be admitted to the bar. At that time, you didn't have to go to school to become an attorney. You had to read the law with an attorney or a judge. And Mary was not a crusader. She said, what made me a crusader was the fact that the New Jersey Supreme Court denied me admittance to the bar. So she joined with the New Jersey Suffrage Association and was very persistent and got legislation to be admitted to the bar. She became a leading suffragist in New Jersey, sponsoring child labor reform, as well as other things. Alice Paul, another New Jersey, internationally known woman. Alice also hailed from South Jersey, daughter of Quakers, highly educated. She received a PhD in sociology. When she was in England at school, she saw these women suffragists from England had very different models and ways of protesting for suffrage. One was marches, another was picketing, and hunger strikes. So when she came back to the United States, she decided to do something about it. The day before Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated, she arranged a 5,000-woman march down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. And a good portion of those women wound up in the hospital because they were pelleted with rocks, called names, whatever. That didn't work. So in 1917, she decided to have 1,000 silent sentinels. These were women dressed in white who stood in front of the White House and picketed. The next year, Wilson relented and said he would support it. This person you should all be familiar with. She's Reverend Florence Spearing Randolph. She was very active in the suffrage movement. She was the executive director of the New Jersey Suffrage Association, and she organized and was pastor of a church here in Summit, that is the Wallace Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, a beautiful church that still exists. Very active woman, also organized the New Jersey Federation of Colored Women's Clubs. This is a depiction of one of the silent sentinels. Actually, this cartoon was made by a Union County woman by the name of Allender, who was actually the cartoonist for the women's suffrage movement. They used Woodrow Wilson's words against him. If you read this, it says, "We shall fight for the things we have always carried nearest to our hearts, for democracy, for the right of those who submit to authority to have a voice in their own governments." And as I said, Wilson finally relented in 1918. We had an historic first last year in Union County. For the first time in the history, we had the majority of the Freeholder Board as women. We also hit a first in Union County with our mayors last year, and Nora is in the middle there. We had a total of 9 women mayors. They're not all shown there. Dahlia Vertrice on the left is from Hillside, Sarah Tedesco from Garwood, Nora, of course, from Summit, Erica Dubois from Springfield, Shelley Brindle from Westfield, and Colleen Moore from Fanwood. And this year, out of the 21 towns, we have 10 women mayors. Margaret McManus from Winfield, Christine Dansereau from Roselle, Michelle Delasfort from Union, Andrew Devaney from Berkeley Heights, and Linda Karlovich from Kenilworth. So I suspect next year we'll break the chain and have 11. And lastly, I just wanted to mention a very important woman we sometimes forget, and that's Hannah Caldwell. And as you know, Hannah Caldwell was married to James Caldwell. This is not actually the real depiction of what happened. She appears on our seal because she was the motivation of giving the troops, building up their morale after the Battle of Connecticut Farms. She was killed probably accidentally by a redcoat or a Hessian soldier during, right after the battle, but it was her husband who took her death and said basically to the troops, this is a woman, you know, if they'll do this to a civilian and a mother of 9 children, how are they going to treat the rest of us? And he really built up the morale of the Continental Army. So you can see that there were a lot of angry women involved in the movement, and they got things done. So that's our little history. But I did also, if I may, make a public service announcement, and that is we had several meetings in the county on the COVID-19 virus, and I issued a press release yesterday saying that anyone at risk or concerned with social distancing or just concerned about the virus can very easily download or get from Rosemary an application for a vote-by-mail ballot. It's simple, it's easy, and every ballot in every election is counted. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Would you like to stay up for a moment and see if anyone has any questions for you? We'll first call on council members if anyone has any questions for John.
That was great.
Yeah, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
And are there any questions from the public? Guess not. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have a second presentation about women's suffrage, and that's Diana Burrows, who is a junior at Summit High School. Thank you so much for coming.
Hello. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Diana Burrows. So 2020 marks 100 years since the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote. It is the right of an American citizen to be able to vote, and women across the U.S. fought valiantly to be able to get that basic right. Even before women were granted the right to vote, they were still making an impact on their government. As said before, they were highly involved in the abolition movement, the temperance movement, and there was many other movements that women joined so they could make an impact without having the right to vote. But once they got the right to vote, they gained a new way to control and have an influence on their own government. So since 1920, the U.S. has become a more equal and fair place for women, but we do still have a lot of work to do. The U.S. as a whole lacks women in government, but in contrast, Summit, New Jersey is a leader of advancement and growth for women's rights. Right now, there are only 26 women serving in the Senate out of 100, making 74% of the Senate male. In the House of Representatives, there are 101 women serving out of 435 people, which is less than in the Senate, only 23% female. Also considering that in 1920 there was 0 women in the Senate, and now we're only up to 26. This is taking a while for progress to be made. We still very much struggle with having women in government. Even today, out of the 15 presidential cabinet members, only 2 are women. There's only ever been 1 female governor of New Jersey, and every town that touches Summit, except for Short Hills, has a male mayor. The statistics go on and on throughout U.S. history, but Summit is an exception. Out of the 7 common council members, 4 are female. The mayor of Summit, Nora Radis, is an example of a strong female leader. Amy Carnes, Chief Communications Officer, Lori Toth, Assistant City Engineer, Megan Avalone, Director of Health, and Marjorie Fox as Councilwoman, as well as many more women are part of this Summit community government. Even having this meeting right now is a way to show how Summit supports and celebrates its female citizens. Summit has been a divergent in the trend of sexism. As a young woman living in such a town, I can only say that this has a positive influence on me. Seeing women in positions of power shows young women and girls around this town that they can also become leaders. The more female leaders we have in government, the more inspired our young women will become. Exactly half the population of America is female. Present-day women must act as our ancestors did. Spread the message of equality, stand up for what you believe in, and fight sexism. Don't let anyone say you can't do something because you're a woman, because being a woman is our best strength. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. That was a wonderful message, a very inspiring message, and I'm very pleased that we have so many women on the dais. And we also have Councilwoman Beth Little and Councilwoman Susan Hairston and our wonderful clerk, Rosie Licatis. So we have a team of a lot of women and a lot of also really supportive great men. So thank you to everyone. And does anyone have any questions for Diana? I think anyone from...
Council President, I'd like to point out we also have a female CFO.
Oh, that's
in
correct.
Tammy
I'm
Baldwin,
sorry.
so it's also-
My apologies, Tammy. Tammy Baldwin, our wonderful CFO. So, yes, and also parking services. So we have a lot of women in leadership positions in our community. So thank you so much. And now we'll move on to our last presentation. Megan Avalon, the Westfield Area Health Director, is going to talk to us about our favorite topic, COVID-19.
Presentation to follow.
I know.
Positive.
That was the enlightening.
I don't know, Joanne, did you hit off when you? No. Okay. There you go. Okay.
All right.
Just escape from that. Yeah.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. I'm Megan Avalone, the health officer for the City of Summit, and I work for the Westfield Regional Health Department. We provide shared services in the forms of a health agreement to the city. So tonight, I'm here to talk about probably not an uplifting topic as the last two, but COVID-19, novel coronavirus, what the city should know and what residents should know. You know, we're getting a lot of information, and it's pretty scary. So I certainly understand why residents are concerned. So I'm hoping that tonight, in talking to the governing body and to the residents, we can help have residents have a better understanding of what it is exactly the health department is doing to be prepared. And I hope that they would feel assured that we are certainly prepared if things take a turn for the worse. So. First, I want to talk about putting COVID-19 into perspective. You know, there's been a lot of news outlets reporting on it and a lot of information that seems pretty scary. But I want to, you know, talk about the actual risk and what we see every year. So, for example, in the 2018-2019 flu season, last flu season, we had over 35 million cases in the U.S. About 491,000 individuals who were hospitalized, and 34,200 deaths. Every year, flu season varies. It can be very unpredictable. Healthy people can become very, very sick with the flu, but usually there's little concern. People say, oh, it's just the flu. Sometimes we really have to remind people over and over and over again to get a flu shot. COVID-19, certainly the numbers are much lower. The good news is because we're used to preparing for flu every year. We're used to preparing for communicable disease outbreaks like COVID-19. In 2009, 2010, we had the H1N1 pandemic. Many of you, I'm sure, remember. And the good news is that's still fresh in our mind. We know how to respond. Even if we have to run mass vaccination clinics, we know how to do that quickly. We know how to assemble a workforce, and we know really how to mobilize and get it done. Some of the things that the health department is doing is we're referring back to our pandemic plans. I've been in constant contact with the schools, with Summit's long-term care centers, your subacute centers, your urgent care centers, obviously Overlook Hospital, and myself have a wonderful relationship, and private care providers. Also, we've been getting calls from residents, questions about, should I travel? Are certain activities safe? So we've been able to answer them as they come in. So how do coronaviruses spread? Well, through the air, by coughs and sneezing, by touching an object that the virus lives on, and then touching your eyes, nose, and mouth, close contact with those who are sick, and certainly if you're a healthcare worker, you need protective gear to help make sure that you do not contract the virus. So how can we prevent the spread? So the good news is we're talking about really basic common sense measures here that are really impactful. We're talking about covering your cough and sneezes with a tissue or sleeve, not your hands. So I've taken to call it the Dracula cough and sneeze, because you just kind of go, right? So we want to do things like that. We want to wash your hands often or use hand sanitizer when soap and water is not available. If you do have hand sanitizer, it's perfectly acceptable. You want to make sure that it contains at least 60% alcohol. Very important, we want individuals to stay home when sick and keep their children home when they're sick. What we've been saying is if you're on the fence, if you don't really know if you should stay home or not, you should stay home. If you're on the fence, should I have my children go to school or stay home? They should stay home. And of course, avoid others who appear to be sick or who you know are sick. One of the most common questions we've been getting is, should I wear a mask? So the CDC does not recommend routine use of masks for the general public. The data coming in shows they're not very effective, and more importantly, we may need those masks for healthcare providers who are in direct contact with individuals who are sick. What if I'm planning to travel to an affected area? So the CDC website has posted travel restrictions. We're advising all residents who are concerned about travel to check that website. Right now, we're also saying you should avoid all non-essential all non-essential travel to areas specified by the CDC. But if you must travel, avoid contact with sick people, avoid animals, and again, wash your hands often. If you recently traveled to an affected area and feel sick, we're telling residents that you should seek medical care right away. You should stay home, cover coughs and sneezes, and again, wash your hands commonly. But before seeking medical care, you should call your medical provider to let them know what's going on and not just show up. We're also reminding residents that calling 911 should really be reserved for a life-threatening emergency. If you have a cough and a fever, but you can still breathe okay, you probably don't need to call 911. Also showing up at the local hospital. If you really need hospital emergency room care, absolutely go. But if you can be managed by your private care provider, that's preferable. And if I think I'm sick, what should I do? So I want to remind the residents that we are still right in the middle of flu season. So we're still seeing lots of cases of flu pop up, and it looks like coronavirus. So sometimes residents might have a cough and a fever, and they're immediately concerned that it's COVID-19. But chances are it's probably flu. So we're asking residents to practice good respiratory hygiene, wash hands frequently and correctly, soap and water, use a paper towel, and then use that paper towel to turn off the faucet. You want to wash for 20 seconds or the happy birthday song twice. Use hand sanitizer, that's at least 60% alcohol. Do not touch your face. Stay home if you're sick. And again, if you think you've been exposed to COVID-19 or if you think you may have COVID-19, please call your medical provider before you go. One of the big things that we've been trying to inform residents about is where can residents get factual information? There's a lot of information from many, many different sources. Social media news feeds, rumors that you may hear from a friend or from a neighbor. So I really want to remind all residents, it's important to stay up to date with current information, but it's important to try to ensure that information is factual. So we've been referring our residents back to 3 really wonderful websites. The CDC has a website specific for coronavirus, has great information, a lot of information. You probably can't even read it all in a day, and it's updated really hourly. NJ.gov, the Health Department website, they have very New Jersey specific information on coronavirus, which has been wonderful. And the Westfield Regional Health Department, we have a coronavirus page, and I know the City of Summit has information on their website as well. There's also a call center. So the number is 1-800-222-1222. It's 24/7 for the public if you have general questions about COVID-19. And there are callers, or there are people to take calls in multiple languages. So if you have a general question that doesn't need to be answered by a medical provider, please, the call center has been wonderful in providing information to the public as well. So any specific questions I may be able to answer?
Does anyone have anything? Yes, Susan.
So first of all, I just want to thank you, Megan, for being so ahead of this, for really being a great resource to our mayor, to our safety committee. You have really been an excellent resource. And I know the number one thing you've put into my head that I want to just reiterate is we really need to be educated about this, because you've been through this before, and the city has done a good job at having a plan in place. And the one thing that I wanted to ask you about the weather. There is some talk about when it's warm, we won't be having to worry about that, but I'm not so sure. Can you speak to that?
I can. So the short answer is we just don't know. There's lots of possibilities. When spring comes, when the weather gets warmer, people are more outside, it's quite possible that this will die down and hopefully we'll never see it again. It's also possible that we'll continue to see activity throughout the spring and summer. But what's also likely is we'll see a decrease in cases over the spring and summer, and it will ramp back up again in the fall. In fact, that's exactly what happened during H1N1. During the spring, we had some cases. We didn't really see as many cases during the warmer months, and then as soon as September hit, we started to see an increase in cases. It's really impossible to say which direction it will go in, but I think it's important that residents, even throughout the summer, that we really want to take these messages to heart. So even throughout the summer, you still want to be washing your hands as often as possible, using hand sanitizer, and staying home if you're sick.
Thank you. And I bring that up also because a term I hadn't heard before, the social distancing, that we need to make sure our schools are ready, as we've heard happening in other districts, to have education happen online, and also some of our events. And so in the summertime, there's a lot of things happening. How do you think we'll be advised about what we should be thinking about canceling, and is that coming from the state?
You know, I think it's a case-by-case situation. Right now, it's impossible for me or anybody to say what the situation's going to look like in May and June and July. I can tell you that I've been in regular and frequent contact with the mayor, with the administrator, and I'm certainly available at all times to the schools, or if anybody has a concern. I think for activities, I think we should consider each specific scenario one at a time. At this time, there's so many unknowns that I don't necessarily know that we can say, we can develop a whole plan moving forward for months from now.
Yes, Nora.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. I can attest, we've been in constant contact, so I appreciate it. I won't speak to it because it's not our jurisdiction, the schools, but I do know that the schools have been working hard to have a plan in place in the event they need it. And, thus far, no, they don't, but, they're ready. The other thing I wanted to point out is you mentioned last week when we did that panel discussion that one of the important things is people who, if they think they're ill, when they talk to their caregiver, they need to be very honest about where they've been, who they've talked to, were they in New York City traveling, and were they with someone while they were in the city having dinner who had said he knew someone who had corona. So that's really, really important that we be honest about where we've been and how we feel. What are our symptoms, not to try to say, oh, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. So.
Absolutely. When you're calling your healthcare provider, I don't think there's any such thing as sharing too much information. And you really want to pay attention to how your body feels. If you regularly travel into Manhattan or take mass transportation and you have maybe a slight fever and a sore throat, you want to pay attention to that. So we're asking all residents to be really hyper alert to how their own body is feeling.
Thank you.
Beth?
Thank you. Thank you again for all you're doing, and we've all been in contact with you. So I'm sure and we're not your only town, so I really appreciate all your efforts. I have a question about our older population. I've seen, obviously, most of us have family members who fall in that category, and I've been watching the guidelines, and there have been different guidelines for older Americans that they start doing some social distancing, stocking up on food. Do you have any specific advice for us? We do have some senior centers in town. We have SAGE, we have the Housing Authority, we have a senior center. So do you have any specific recommendations about how both the city and residents should be looking at these guidelines in terms of being an older population?
Yeah, so we have already started planning, like I said, with the long-term care facilities. We've been in touch with the other senior facilities, and we're going to probably start to have something specific with SAGE. But CDC is now recommending that older adults try to stay home as much as possible. This is still a pretty new scenario, but what we're seeing really shows that older adults are disproportionately affected by this virus, and that's certainly concerning. So what we're saying is if you don't have to go out to public places, you might want to not go out to public places. If you have to, you certainly want to wash your hands frequently, not touch your face, and really try to do that social distancing that we talked about earlier, staying 6 feet away from others if you possibly can.
Okay. David?
Megan, thank you again. You had mentioned that there's so many cases of flu every year, and now there's COVID-19. Is there something as far as a person's symptoms that are different between the flu and COVID-19? So if a person is thinking they have the flu, it may be COVID-19, or alternatively, they think they have COVID-19, they have the flu.
Yeah, at this point, not really. Any type of these types of respiratory illnesses, the problem is they all look alike, and they all look like the flu. And usually they're all spreading during flu season, so it's really, really hard to tell without a test what is what. We have been paying really close attention to travel history, and we've been really paying attention to contacts, but that's probably going to change in the near future. So that's why we're asking anybody who feels as though they may have symptoms compatible with COVID-19, which is fever and cough, to call their healthcare provider for more clinical one-to-one guidance.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public? Yes, come on up. Yes.
Eileen Kelly, 47 Woodland Avenue. I just had a question around what, if any, number of residents locally are quarantined that you know of, or if there's anything to share on a local basis regarding COVID.
I don't have my list in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak. If there, certainly not if any, not dozens, but generally speaking, here's what we're doing currently. Anybody returning from mainland China, Italy, South Korea, or Iran is put on a mandatory 2-week quarantine. We're getting those manifests from the airlines, so we're following up, the health department is following up with those individuals. It doesn't necessarily mean at all that the person is sick. or that the person is going to become sick. It's really at an overabundance of caution that we're saying you need to be separated for the 2-week incubation period. Also, anybody that's been in contact with somebody that is tested positive, we are quarantining. And this is something that we're doing throughout the country, not specific to Summit. But the idea is we really want to stop that chain of infection before it has a chance to spread. So, and I can tell you, across the state, across the country, public health is working hard behind the scenes to make sure individuals who should be quarantined are absolutely quarantined.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been very informative. We really, oh, go ahead.
And if I may, just one last thing. I really just want to remind residents that truly at this point, I think we can still stay calm. I feel confident that our response is going to be fine. All the city agencies have been preparing really, really well. And I think that the best thing we can do, it sounds so simple, but again, just wash your hands, stay home if you're sick, don't touch your face, and call your healthcare provider with any questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. Do you know how hard it is not to touch your face?
Yes.
Very hard.
Very
Okay,
Especially when you
so
think about not touching
at
your
this
face.
point in the evening, I'll give everyone a minute for those who want to make an exit. And then we have public comment. So if anyone has a comment, please step up and to the podium. All right, I guess there are no public comments. So we'll move on to the regular part of the agenda. So first we have ordinances for hearing. Madam Clerk, could you read the first ordinance, please?
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 12, Parks, Public Areas, Recreation Facilities, Sections 12-3, Summit Family Aquatic Center, and 12-4, Municipal Golf Course.
Thank you. So, Councilman Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. At the February 19th council meeting, we introduced this ordinance, which makes 3 small changes to fees at the pool and the golf course. First, we're adding a new non-resident senior citizen price category, which will cost $160. Currently, these senior citizens pay the non-resident rate of $320. We settled on $160 because it brings the cost down to a fairer price point, but they will not pay less than a Summit resident individual. Second, at the golf course, Summit corporations currently pay $1,500 for the privilege of their employees to buy a resident golf membership, and along with their greens fees, they can play golf at the Summit Muni. This ordinance makes a change so that the corporation still pays the $1,500, but their employees can play golf just by showing their corporate ID card and paying greens fees. And third, at the golf course again, Summit business owners and their employees that don't live in Summit are able to purchase a non-resident membership for $115 to play at the Summit Muni. This ordinance makes a change so that these Summit business owners and employees may purchase a resident membership whether or not they reside in Summit. The new pricing structure will be $50 for adults and $40 for seniors 62 and up. Greens fees will still apply. Proof of ownership of the business or employment must be presented. I move this ordinance for hearing.
Second.
So the hearing is now open. Does any member of council have any comments on this ordinance?
I can start.
Okay, take it away, Councilman O'Sullivan.
Well, the first part at the pool for the senior resident, you know, we just got some feedback from people that used to live in Summit and they moved out, but they still enjoy coming back to Summit to be with their friends. They wanted a senior price point for themselves. So Mark and Greg and I and a few others, we thought that this $160 price point would be fair for senior citizens and also bring it down to a level that was not less than any Summit resident. And then at the golf course, it's just a matter of making it easier for people to play. So if your corporation, if it's Bristol Myers and they pay the $1,500, those employees can now just show up with their corporate ID card instead of having to go in and buy a resident card, or, a resident ID card, and then pay greens fees. And the same for the Summit business owners as well, that we would just make it easier for those folks that give so much to Summit during the day, and that they would be able to play golf and maybe stay in Summit a little bit longer throughout the day. So that was the impetus.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'll
Yes, Councilman Vartan.
spot on. I'll just add a couple things. The first is that for the pool, we have a non-resident option for single people and also a non-resident option for families. This is just adding the non-resident option for seniors, which I think has been long overdue. The only other thing that I'll add is both at the pool and at the golf course, we're really not looking at a deluge of people that's about to be flowing in to play, and show up at the pool. This is a measure that, I think addresses a need, and is not going to be, I think the impact will be negligible. Thank you.
Councilman Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. I mean, I guess my perspective towards this, having over the few years being here, we've discussed this in kind of a different steps and at different times. And I think Councilman Vartan raises an important issue, and that is capacity. And that's been an issue that's been discussed in the context of how open we make these facilities to non-residents. We have to recognize that when we have the capital costs associated with these facilities, those are really borne by the residents. The operating costs are borne by the residents. So residents also expect that there is some breathing room at these facilities, that they're not overly crowded. I am not expecting that this changes necessarily either at the golf course or the pool to have, as you, Councilman Vartan said, a deluge of people coming in from outside of town. But having said that, if it turns out that there is a problem with capacity, and Mark, I'm sure, will tell us if this becomes an issue, then I think we should reconsider it. Because this is kind of like, this is nice, it's a good way of opening it up. It helps, as you said, people who formerly lived here or who have an interest of coming here, that's great. But our first and singular priority has to be the residents of this town and the facilities that they have helped to construct and build and operate. So I'll support it now on the premise that it is not going to change anything, but I think we should always be open to the concept of revisiting if necessary.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Little.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to kind of go along with David's. We have considered opening these categories in the past, and we have in the past denied it, and we've said that we want to limit to Summit residents. I'm going to support this one, and I had to look at it carefully and speak to Councilman O'Sullivan about it, because this is a very measured and reasonable request. This is not opening large categories. We do have non-resident categories at the pool, as we talked about. This is just adding the non-resident senior category, and the golf course measures seem to be streamlining the process more than adding a lot more people. So I'm definitely in favor of this, but we'll, we take this very seriously and make sure that we maintain these facilities for the residents and their enjoyment and use, but I do support this measure. And thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bowman. Yep.
I'm not going to add too much more because I think we all are saying the one thing. Same thing is that, especially with regards to the golf course. I mean, I think that one disagreement I have with you, Councilman Naidu, is I'm not sure if we're going to hear it from Mark or from our residents. If there's
either one will do for me.
But I think that number one, we have invested a lot into these two properties, and if we can have more people enjoying it all at the same time, I think that's important for both the corporate as well as the residents of Summit. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Hairston.
Thank you, Council President. I am going to speak to this from the revenue side and say that I am very pleased that we're making this step, because I do remember the time when we didn't have enough traffic and there were complaints about our facilities, whether they were valid or not, and folks were going to other communities. So I want to applaud our Community Services Department for being responsive and getting them up to speed to where they're really sought after now. But I 100% agree that we don't want our residents to not feel welcome there. So thank you for the revenue side.
Are there any comments from members of the public? Come on up, Eileen.
Hi, everyone. I'll just repeat my name, Eileen Kelly, 47 Woodland Avenue. And thank you so much for all that background and explanation. I had one question, and it was, I think, sort of, Councilwoman Hairston, you alluded to it, which was the finances. I was curious if this ordinance was written with respect to the financial state of these two locations. And if it was, just a little bit, if you can provide some background on, do these two places break even? What's sort of the state of affairs there financially? And if there was any estimate around, how many people do we anticipate will actually become new members through these two ordinances? Thank you.
Mark, would you mind coming up, please, and answering that?
Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank you.
Council President Fox. Both of our facilities, we do break even. So that's not even an issue from a financial standpoint. As far as the numbers are concerned, I think 2016 was the last time we had a corporate membership at the golf course, and that was Celgene. So the last couple years, we haven't even had anybody. So I don't foresee, us getting a lot more traffic with that. And as far as the business membership, same thing. We'll get a handful of businesses and their employees that come down. So, it's not going to affect our current members. At least I don't think it will. Does that answer your question?
And then
Thank you.
could you just mention the pool, because it's just a handful of people that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the numbers specifically in the top of my head, but I can get them for everybody and just let you know how many out-of-town families that we had in the last couple of years, as well as individuals.
Can I just
Yes, go ahead.
Mark, while you're standing there, would it be fair to say that this is sort of a clerical change?
Yeah, both the corporate membership as well as the business membership are already in the ordinance. It's just a change. The corporate membership we had in there for $1,500, but it stated that their employees had to get a membership as well. That's not the case. All they need to do is go down to the golf course, show their badge from where they work, and then they pay resident greens fees. The business membership, similar circumstance. The business pays $50, or I'm sorry, the business is allowed to get a membership at the Summit resident rates, not an out-of-town rates. In the existing ordinance, it says Summit businesses can get a non-resident rate, which is wrong.
So in other words, this is a drafting correction.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the only addition is the senior membership to the pool.
Right. Well, I commend you for doing a great job with both these facilities, and I think, this is something where we're balancing, giving something back to our businesses without taking away anything from the residents. And, I think we should continue to monitor and make sure that this doesn't change that balance. And as long as it continues in this regard, I think we're great.
Yeah, obviously we'll keep an eye on both facilities to see, the numbers, and if we have to come back to you next year, we'll come back to you next year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the public? Anything else from council? Okay, so I now declare this hearing closed, and we are now on to ordinances for final consideration. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance amending the code, Chapter 12 Parks, Public Areas, Recreation Facilities, Sections 12-3 Summit Family Aquatic Center, and 12-4 Municipal Golf Course.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. As just discussed, Ordinance number 20-3209 to add a non-resident senior citizen pool membership category and fee and amend the golf course business membership category and fees. I move this ordinance for final consideration.
Second.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Motion carries. Now we're on to ordinances for introduction. Madam Clerk?
An ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
Okay, Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance establishes a cap bank for the municipal budget. Let me be perfectly clear in stating that we will be presented a budget with an increase that is significantly below the cap. The Finance Committee, along with Michael, Tammy, and all the other department heads, have worked incredibly diligently on what is a very impressive budget. We are introducing this ordinance and establishing a cap bank as a contingency tool to allow an increase in the event of an unforeseen emergency. The hearing and voting for this ordinance will take place at the next meeting of the Common Council on Tuesday, March 24th. Also at that meeting, Administrator Rogers will present the budget. I move to introduce this ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could we please have the roll call?
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to resolutions. We have 4 resolutions from Law and Labor, 1 on the agenda and 3 more from the floor. So Councilman Bowman,
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, we like to keep everyone.
just keep us all on our toes.
Extended it here. Okay, the first resolution, 7048, is to appoint a probationary firefighter. As per closed session, we'd like to appoint Carlos Villalobos, who is a Summit resident. For 5 years, he's been a volunteer, waiting for his chance to become a member of the Summit Fire Department. This will be effective on March 23rd. And as an FYI, we didn't share this in closed session, but starting April 1st, he will be at the Fire Academy in Morristown for 10 weeks? 10 weeks, yeah. 10 weeks. So if the volunteer fire wasn't enough, now he's going to be at it all day. So I move this resolution.
I second it.
Does anyone have any comments on this resolution? Anyone from the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, second one from the floor. Do we have a resolution number for these?
Ordinances are, right here. Let's borrow that.
Okay, here.
Thank you. This would have been nice.
That's what happens when they come from the floor.
Resolution
Yeah.
7080,
them
to
on the
extend
agenda.
sick leave with pay for a DPW employee. As we talked in closed session, this would be granting sick leave with pay through March 19th, 2020. I move this resolution.
And I second it.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Bowman.
Okay, number 3, Resolution 7081 is to extend injury leave with pay for a DPW employee. As per closed session, we have an individual who has a shoulder injury and that he needs to be paid through April 24th, 2020. And as obviously he has the time, that's why he's getting paid. I move this resolution.
And I second it.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
That last
Aye.
one, Councilman.
Okay, Resolution 7075 is to declare vacancies at the police department. As we've all read in the paper, our chief police has announced his retirement effective June 1st. We're going to miss you, Chief. But as such, we are basically setting the tone for hiring his, in effect, replacement. We will be declaring vacancies at the chief of police level, the captain level, lieutenant level, sergeant level, and police officer level. Not that we're going to hire everybody in every one of those levels. We're going to be hiring one individual, but this will allow for any movement that would be required within guidelines. I move this resolution.
And I second it.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Can you pass the agenda back, please?
Hand it to me, and I was.
Okay, okay, now that we got that back. All right, so moving on, we have, Finance has 4 resolutions. Councilman Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. With your permission, I'll bundle the first 3.
Go right ahead.
Excellent, thank you. Resolutions number 7025, 7034, and 7052 all authorize the execution of annual license agreements with the Office, Summit, and Select Restaurants Incorporated for use of the sidewalk outside of Piatino Neighborhood Bistro, the Office Tavern and Grill, and Winberry's. I move to adopt these resolutions.
I second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in, oh, wait, you have one?
No.
No. Councilman Naidu, you're just moving your hands, okay.
Literally not saying a word. You're expecting me to say something. Do you want me
Okay,
to
so
say
no
something?
comments from anyone? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carry. Do you want to do the last resolution, please, Councilman Vartan?
Thank you, Council President. Resolution number 7050 authorizes the submission of a grant from the Summit Free Public Library to the State of New Jersey's Library Construction Bond Act. The grant request is for $100,000 so that the library can purchase a generator. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now moving on, we're up to capital projects and community services, which we have many. Councilwoman
We always
Little.
do.
We always do.
Thank you, Council President. With your permission, I'd like to bundle the first 2 resolutions.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. First 2 resolutions are number 7059 and 7058, and they both involve agreements with Union County. At the December 17th council meeting, council voted to request agreements with Union County, 2 different agreements. One to improve the phasing of the intersection light at Morris Avenue and Orchard Street intersection, and that is you well described in your opening remarks, was to improve the traffic situation in that area and especially on Bryant Parkway. And the second was to install a rapid flashing pedestrian beacon at Union Place and Summit Avenue. The county has agreed to both of these measures, and we would now like to execute the agreements for both with Union County. So I move this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? I'd like to just thank the engineering division for all their work in doing this. I think these are both great projects, and as I mentioned before, we really are concerned about pedestrian safety and safety for drivers as well, and I think this will be a great addition. So with that, if no one else has any comments, I would like to, let's take a vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so resolution number 37051 has been pulled. So on to 7060, Councilwoman Little.
Thank you. Resolution number 7060 is to award a bid for the 2020 sanitary sewer cleaning and TV inspection, and this is one of a series of these resolutions to do this. This is ongoing maintenance of our sewer lines, which we often don't think about, but are crucially important to the running of the city. And this is for the next section that needs to be completed. So I would move this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing nothing, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Councilwoman Little, resolution number 6?
Thank you.
5, I'm sorry.
Number 5, Capital Projects Resolution 5 is number 6906, and that's to reject bids and author a new advertisement for the Huntley Road Area Improvement Project. 12 bids were received, but they were all high, and the lowest bidder had an issue with the bid, so we'd like to start the process over again and rebid that project, and I would move this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Councilwoman Little, 6999.
Thank you. Capital Projects Resolution number 6 is to authorize a change order for the last sanitary sewer cleaning and TV inspection project. And the difference in the price was that there was additional square footage beyond what we had originally mapped. So there's sometimes some discrepancies between what we map and what the actual linear footage that they're actually inspecting, and that's what occurred in this case. So there's a small additional charge of $1,248.96, and I ask that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Capital Projects number 7.
Thank you. The final capital projects resolution is to authorize a change order on the DPW roof replacement project. This is my favorite kind of resolution because they actually said that they didn't need all the money that we had authorized, and they are going to be returning $6,645.92. So I would ask that we approve this resolution and go forward with this.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, now we are moving on to the consent agenda. And these resolutions will all be considered as a whole unless anyone has any comments on any of them. Any members of council? Any members of the public have any comments? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And we are now on to, Mayor Rivas?
May I?
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to say that I am very proud of Chief Weck for all of the incredible work he's done in his 31 years in Summit. I am sad he is leaving, but I fully respect his decision to move on to another phase of his life. He's a young man after all. And I want to assure the public that we will be, there's a process that we will follow in order to hire the next chief of police. Summit has an outstanding police department. I'm convinced not only one of the best in the state, but certainly in the country. And Reverend Harriel is nodding his head in agreement. And so we have a strong group of guys and women, and they will be led by another outstanding chief of police. So there will be lots of times before you leave that we will have some kind of, festivities. But I just want to thank you personally for the tremendous support you've given to me and for everything you've done in this community. And I think your legacy, among many other things, is certainly the community policing that just absolutely brings this city together. It's a different community in terms of policing than it was 20 years ago because of you. So thank you. And
Can I just change one thing?
anything.
Any of the police officers are watching, we're going to promote,
Yes.
right, not hire.
No.
You're probably going to wait over there outside.
No. We will be promoting the chief from within the department and all the promotions, but for one patrol officer that will be hired. Other than that, will be promotions. And we're so.
1,000 calls.
No. We'll just send them to me. But we have such a strong department that it's going to be a pleasure to make these promotions.
There's a great group of men and women
Yep.
to lead on. It's in great hands.
Well, thank you. You've hired quite a bit of them.
And thank you, Chief, for everything you've done. I second what Nora said, and we'll have another opportunity or many more opportunities to laud your many accomplishments. But thank you for everything you've done. And we need to jump back a bit. We have an item, the capital, we have the capital projects and community services. We have a DAR, which is the Affordable Housing 2020 status report that we are, I believe we need a presentation on that, Paul?
Can I just
Beth-
comment
Beth
on
is
it?
supposed to-
Refer
Beth is-
to council.
Can I comment on the DAR?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to inform the public that we met with the Affordable Housing Committee. Paul Cascase directed the meeting, but the committee had a full quorum. Many members were present, including Reverend Harrield, who's here in the audience tonight. So we had a good meeting, and we're updated on all the affordable housing status and activity by Director Cascase. The full report is on the city website, which is required by our settlement agreement with the court, and anyone who wants to look for more information on that can find that on the city website. But the city is moving forward with all of our affordable housing requirements, and that is in progress. So thank you to Director Cascase for all his hard work on this, and we are moving forward, and all that information is available on the website.
Thank you, Councilwoman Little. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add? Is that all we have to? Okay.
Just
So-
give an opportunity to
Does anyone from the public have any questions? Come on up, Reverend Harrield.
I don't have a question. I just want to echo what the mayor said and what Councilwoman Little has said. First, to Chief Weck, I just want to publicly thank you for your leadership, and particularly in the area of community policement. And I just want to, if there had been some way you could have just let us know much earlier that you were leaving, you just came as a shock. I mean,
3 months.
No, I didn't know 3 months. I just saw it on tap. So, but as the mayor said, commendations are in order, and the city has an excellent police department, and it's an attest to your leadership. Also, in the area of affordable housing, the same thing with Paul. The meeting that we had on last Monday, last week, I think it was very helpful and informative, and reflected a lot of progress has been made in this particular area. Also, the numbers were very significant because many of us did not know that much progress had been made, and it's really, I should say, attributed to your ability to think outside of the box and be creative, because that's significant. You're not going along just to get along. You're just doing more, and thinking outside of the box opens up opportunities in a creative way to do what needs to be done. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Does anyone else have any comments from the public? Any other new business or council members' comments? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, adjourned.